So the companies and those who invest in them and lend to them, who are part of the solution, will be rewarded. But those who are lagging behind and are still part of the problem will be punished. But those who are lagging behind and are still part of the problem will be punished.
Fear not, let not your hearts be troubled. Hope is on the horizon, and hopefully some change as well. We'll be into that in a few minutes. I'm David Krayden, coming live from your nation's capital in Ottawa. And I'll be back with a full analysis of what Mark Carney is saying there. Stay tuned.
The Prime Minister lied and his minions continue to lie.
We need political change. But we also need to resolve to resist. And thank you for watching today. And it's Easter Sunday. Happy Easter, happy Resurrection Day. Jesus Christ is Lord. And every knee shall bow and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. I can say that because it's still a free country. Maybe not for long under Mark Carney, though. This man really bothers me. And before I go any further, please subscribe. We're almost at the 50,000 mark. Thank you for your support and the incredible response yesterday to my video about the CBC and polling. I appreciate it so much. But let's watch a little more of Mark Carney threatening Canadians. This man likes to threaten, and he has very, very low anger threshold.
This is an existential threat. We all recognize that. There's increasing urgency around that. But the converse of that, the flip side of that is if you're taking steps, making investments, coming up with new technologies, changing the way you do business, all in service of reducing and eliminating that threat, you're creating value. And what we have seen increasingly, spurred initially by the Sustainable Development Goals, accelerated with Paris, and then through social movements and others and governments acting, is society is putting tremendous value on achieving net zero. So the companies and those who invest in them and lend to them, who are part of the solution, will be rewarded. But those who are lagging behind and are still part of the problem will be punished. But those who are lagging behind and are still part of the problem will be punished.
No, Mark Carney, you shall not, you will not have dominion over this country, over its citizens, over our souls. There's something demonic about this man. Do you see it? There's something frightening about that. Why are so many people, apparently, from what the polls say, energized, satisfied even by Mark Carney? There's nothing to be energized about, nothing to be even satisfied about. Do you really want this banker twit running your life, telling you how much energy you can consume, telling you how to live? Wouldn't you rather have a government that says, mind your own business? Stop telling Canadians how to live. And there's a great clip from Mr. Poilievre, Conservative leader, who said exactly that yesterday. And he hasn't said that in a while. And that's what he needs to say. And he's standing in front of a podium that says change. And that's what we need. But, you know, here's a lesson from Scripture about Mark Carney. Because remember when he was being installed and taking the oath to be Prime Minister, he took time in the middle of that ceremony, which was, of course, a bizarre ceremony that made a mockery of Canada's Christian heritage and Christian fact. Today, over 53% of Canadians are Christians, either Roman Catholic or Protestant. And I think even that's a low number. It's probably more closer to 60% of Canadians still call themselves Christians. And yet it was a pagan ceremony. That's what Mark Carney thinks of Christians. But here's what the Bible, I think, thinks of Mark Carney. This is from Proverbs 10, verse 9 and 10. The man of integrity walks securely, but he who takes crooked paths will be found out. He who winks maliciously causes grief, and a chattering fool comes to ruin. Now, do you think perhaps that's what Mark Carney is, a chattering fool? This is the guy who took time out in his installation as prime minister to wink at the camera. It was a conscious movement. And what did it signal? Was it a signal to his globalist masters? Was it a signal to his Chinese masters? I don't know. But I'll tell you what, it worried me at the time, and it worries me more today. So I was in church this morning for Easter Sunday, and I sang Because He Lives, one of my favorite gospel songs. I wish I could do it right now, but of course I can't get on air. But a lot of people came up to me and said, how do you think it's going to end next week? Or actually in 8 days, April 28th. How do you think it's going to go? And I told him, I said, my heart and my gut is telling me a slim conservative majority. And most of the people I talked to agreed with me, even though they're worried. They're worried that Mark Carney poses an existential threat to their freedom and their safety. It's not climate change that's the existential threat. It's Mark Carney and the Liberal Party. They're the existential threat to your freedom, your liberty, your safety as a person, your ability to work, your ability to prosper, your ability to be a free agent in this country. Mark Carney and the Liberals are the existential threat. And I can't overemphasize that. By the way, before I forget, please complain about the CBC. We talked about this yesterday. Complain about the mainstream media crying and behaving badly because there were members of the independent or new media at the leaders' debate. Here's the information. Info at debates-debats.ca. That's the leaders' debate commissions. Go to the website, have a look at it, contact them, and tell them how you feel about CBC behaving the way they did. Saying that if you don't agree with CBC, if you don't like the questions CBC decides are debatable, you have no place here. You're not welcome at the debate. Tell the Leaders Debate Commission that you agreed with having independent new media at this debate. You agreed with them being allowed to ask questions because they were good questions. And you don't like the way CBC behaved because they didn't get 100% of the time. I encourage you to do that. I really would. So anyway, I hope I encouraged people at my church today, and I hope I encourage people out there. It is possible. It's still possible to have change. I'm not going to go through all the polls. I understand Pierre Poilievre is leading in one poll, the Main Street poll. But I think we're going to see more on Monday and Tuesday. We're going to see the polls generally reflect greater support for the Conservative Party. And I think the fact that there have been so many people out voting early. I talked to a number of people at church this morning who'd already voted. They tell me the numbers have been huge everywhere. And that's what I'm seeing reported. I think that's good because I think most of those people are voting Conservative. I don't see anybody saying, oh my God, I can't wait to vote for Mark Carney. He's going to do so much for this country. Mark Carney is saying that. The Liberal Party is saying that. You see the talking points all the time on social media, on X anyway, and on other engines. But no, it's not a great response from Mark Carney. This is all nonsense. So Mark Carney released his costing, as it's called today, and we'll get to that in a minute, and we'll break it down for you. But here you
CBC News, in your platform your COSA platform you released today, you outline almost $130 billion in new spending, but a shrinking deficit over the next 4 years. How and why should Canadians believe your numbers add up?
Well, first off, thanks for the question. The numbers do add up very much. And I'd make a couple of distinctions here. What we're doing is we're taking government spending, which has been growing too fast, It's been growing at 9%, the operating spending, and we're focusing in on that, reducing duplication, finding efficiencies on through the delivery of various programs, using technology, capping the federal public service, which has grown by 40% over the last 10 years. So a series of measures that are going to make government more effective, reduce the cost of that spending, reduce the rate of growth of that spending. And then the second thing that we're doing, very importantly, so that's spending less. And the second thing that we're doing is we're not spending that amount of money, we're investing that amount of money. So we're using very limited government resources to catalyze enormous private sector investment. And that's what drives this economy forward. That's what meets this moment.
Okay, 2 comments. This is baffle gab. This is newspeak. This is double talk. Governments always refer to spending taxpayer money as investing. That's the euphemism. That means, oh, we're not spending your money. We're not wasting your money, folks. We're investing your money. Yeah, we're investing it in an LGBTQ project over here. That's investment. How is it? Why is it an investment? Are we going to see a return on that investment? No, but that's not the point. It's an investment because it sounds better that way. Mark Carney is going to bankrupt this country. He's going to print money. He's going to make inflation, and he's going to devalue the US dollar and the Canadian dollar, and we're going to be poor as church mice after 6 months of Mark Carney unveiled, the real Mark Carney, which you're going to see very quickly after the election. If he becomes prime minister. If he doesn't become prime minister, he's gone in a New York moment to New York City where his wife and kids are, where his heart is, where his money is. He's gone. But if he becomes prime minister, watch out, Canada. You're going to be impoverished when he devalues the dollar and he brings on a rush of inflation. That's where Mark Carney's coming from. And if you think it's crazy to talk that way, oh, no, I'm not going to increase the deficit or the debt. I'm investing the money. We'll get to Pierre Poilievre in a second. And he actually explains why it's not 130 billion. It's 250 billion because there's already money laid out, invested by Justin Trudeau. That's going to remain the same. So it's 250 billion. I'll let Pierre Poilievre explain that in a minute. But here's how crazy, shall I say demonic, Liberal Party supporters are. Wow.
These are some nice guests you have here.
Yeah, my thanks to Caryma Rules and Dacey Media for that X post. Are these people deranged? I mean, this is they're doing the chicken dance. That's supposed to be elbows up, right? I mean, yeah, that's a real sign of a Canadian patriot. Elbows up, do the chicken dance, and run after people filming you and threaten them. They're apparently threatening them, or they're trying to push them out of the way. And this is absolutely unbalanced behavior, but it's part and parcel for what Mark Carney represents. So here's Mark Carney's, Canada's strong. Yeah, okay, so there it is. There's his fiscal costing plan. Oh boy, we've got it all there. All right, I'll get to that one in a sec because this is shocking. All right. The carbon border adjustment mechanism. Oh, yeah. We had this here. There it is. That's one of the new measures. It's going to cost a lot of money. Oh, because Mark Carney has never told the truth about the carbon border adjustment mechanism. This is the carbon tariff. This is the carbon tariff. It's going to cost you a lot of money. It's going to cost corporations a lot of money, and they're going to be leaving Canada to avoid it. And Mark Carney somehow pulls out of his magic hat the very notion that it's a good thing for Canada to have a carbon carbon border adjustment mechanism, which is again double talk for carbon tariff. Oh, this is good for Canada. It's going to make us more competitive. BS. What it means. Here's what it means. You see those countries in green or blue-green or whatever the heck that is, turquoise or green. Those are the so-called countries following the right net zero plans that Canada can trade with. Oh, Scandinavia, France, maybe Britain, Portugal, not the US, not huge swaths of Asia, huge swaths of Africa, the entire Middle East, Australia. No, we can't trade with any of those countries because, only allowed to trade with these carbon tax countries. Everything else Canada will pay tariff on for imports. So, in other words, it's going to cost you more money to import anything from all of these countries in gray because they're not in the club. They're not in the net zero club. So there's going to be a carbon tariff from all produce products imported from those countries. That's what the carbon tariff's about. It's frightening. Let's hear Mark the Clown Carney talk about it.
What we're going to do is to ensure that there's fair competition for our companies and that we penalize high polluting foreign imports. So we're going to develop a carbon border adjustment mechanism. What that does is promote jobs here at home. It prevents carbon leakage abroad, and it aligns Canada with our allies who are still engaged in the fight against climate change.
Davos and
And of course, that we cut it there because that was Liz Truss talking about what a pitiful governor of the Bank of England Mark Carney was. But there's Mark Carney talking about his plan. It's more competitive. How? The whole world is turning its back on net zero policies because they were catastrophic. And they weren't just catastrophic, they were stupid. They make no sense at all. We're not facing any existential threat. The world is not going to end in the next 10 years because of climate change. People are not going to stop flying in jets, driving gas-powered automobiles. Ain't going to happen. Net zero was a crashing failure that a lot of people made money off of, including Mark Carney. It was all about making money for Mark Carney. I don't think he even believes in this BS, but he pushes it because it's been profitable for Mark Carney and for companies like, Brookfield Assets Management. That's the company that didn't want to pay taxes, stashed all of its money in Bermuda and the Cayman Islands. So Mark Carney didn't have to pay any taxes or any corporate taxes. That's the company that invested in pipelines and fossil fuels while denying the same to Canada. Well, Mark Carney was denying that to Canada while he was chairman of Brookfield Assets Management. Let's not forget how deep the corruption is, how deep the hypocrisy is as we go down the wire the last 7 days. I saved the best slide for last, and I got lots more coming here. Have a look at this. In Mr. Carney's costing plan, he's got all kinds of money set aside for farmers. Protect farmers from losses. What losses? Are you listening to me? What losses is he talking about? All the losses from the corporate carbon tax, from the carbon tariff, and I believe he's going to reintroduce, or shall I say, increase the percentage of the consumer carbon tax, which he has not erased. He has not stopped. He just reduced the percentage of that carbon tax to zero. It's still on the books, and I do not believe he will eliminate the consumer carbon tax if he's elected as prime minister. That's what we have to look forward to. 3 carbon taxes. But if you look under what he's doing to strengthen Canada's food security, help farmers and ranchers buy equipment, expand the Canadian Agricultural Loans Act, boost agri-marketing program, domestic food processing fund. Can you tell me why the hell we need any of this? Why can't our farmers not going to be making any money anymore? Are they going to be dependent on a government stipend? Are farmers expected to be on welfare because they can't afford to produce food? Or is this collectivization of welfare? This sounds like bloody Soviet communism or Chinese communism under Mao Zedong, where people starved because farmers couldn't produce food. Artificial famines in both countries. 2 or 3 of them in the Soviet Union because of collectivized agriculture, collectivized farms, or collective farms, where, of course, the state owned everything and farmers were expected to work for the state. And if you made any money, you were called a kulak, and you were the enemy of the state, and you were killed. Death sentence because you were the enemy of the state, or as they like to say, the people, who had nothing, of course, to do with electing the Soviet state. So that's what we're in store for with Mark Carney. Cannot overemphasize how black this hole is. Now, Saturday, Pierre Poilievre was out on the hustings talking common sense, which usually he does, not on Ukraine and some other issues, but he talks a lot of common sense. And he mentioned something that was very important, and we'll get to that. I'll stop it when we get to that. But here he is talking about hope and change, but hope for drug addicts. And he says there's going to be hope for people. He's not saying throw all the drug addicts in jail. Poilievre says no. Let's get them treatment. Let's get them free from their drug addiction. Let's allow them to be liberated from a habit that has destroyed their life. I like what Pierre Poilievre is saying here. I really think this is good news.
Well, to be clear, drug possession will still be a criminal offense. What we are proposing, though, is to give more sentencing options to judges so that they can put people in mandatory treatment. Now, some might look at me and say, for a long time, Mr. Poilievre, you've talked about the need for more freedom, letting people make their own decisions. And I do believe in that. We need more freedom. And if I were creating a new political party, it would be the Mind Your Own Business Party.
Isn't that refreshing? And you remember Poilievre saying that in a Christmas interview. And I think it was inspired. That's what I want. I want a government that is a mind your own business government. Stop telling me how to live. Stop telling me what to read. Stop telling me what to say. Stop telling me you're going to control my life if I don't listen to you. Poilievre is standing right in front of a podium that says change. That needed to be the message from day one. All right, it took him a while to stop listening to his campaign managers and people out there like Corey Tenike who said, just focus on Donald Trump, just focus on how evil Donald Trump is. He's not listening to those people anymore. He's talking about change, which he represents, and Mark Carney doesn't. He's talking about hope for Canada and hope for drug addicts, and a government is mind your own business. Here he explains why it's not a contradiction to support treatment for drug addicts and support mind your own business.
Let people decide for themselves. But there are some people who've lost the capacity. When you are hopelessly addicted to fentanyl, it is 100 times more powerful an addictive substance than is heroin. There's literally no free will left. It is impossible to make that decision on yourself in these moments. And that is why it is appropriate for the law to come in and take that person, put them in a treatment program, and let them have the hope that Chris and Aidan and so many recovering addicts now share with the rest of the world. We will also pay for 50,000 treatment spots, and we will do it by defunding the supply of powerful opioids, cutting back on bureaucracy, activists, and those who continue to perpetuate the problem, and instead putting the money into treatment facilities. We will close drug dens. We will shut down the treatment centers. We'll shut down the drug dens and replace them with treatment centers. The drug dens that have been tried to be pushed on Richmond, that won't happen anymore. There will be no government-funded drug use sites under a Conservative government. We will ensure that the money goes to treatment, and no longer will communities have to go get up in arms to fight back against having drug use centers in their communities. We will shut down those centers. We will ban taxpayer-funded hard drugs and redirect those funds to real treatment, detox, rehabilitation, and recovery houses. We will impose life sentences on fentanyl traffickers and the criminal gangs flooding our communities with poison. If you profit off the suffering of others, a Conservative government will make sure you pay the highest price. And we will go further. We'll strengthen our borders to keep illegal drugs and guns out, and we will bring forward a choice for Canadians in the next election. It was a very simple choice. After the lost Liberal decade of rising costs and crime, can you afford a fourth Liberal term? With the same Liberal team, same Liberal ministers, the same Liberal ministry, the same overdoses, crime, tent cities, and out-of-control cost of living. No, you can't afford it. You cannot afford a fourth Liberal term. We need a change with a new Conservative government that will cut taxes, cap spending, ban drugs, treat addiction, and bring home the Canadian promise. We need change so you can afford a home, change so you can afford food, change that you're safe on your streets. My message to anyone out there who's suffering from addiction is this: look to the stories of Chris and Aidan. They prove that you can turn your life around and do right by your family and your community, and then you can be an inspiration to all people.
What? Pierre, are you going to shut down these so-called safe injection sites or supervised injection sites? You're not going to fund them with taxpayer money? How much sense does that make? I have been waiting years to hear a politician come out and say, I'm not going to fund these drug dens anymore. I'm not going to fund these places because it's not healthy. He's offering a healthy alternative. He's offering a positive alternative. Get treatment. Get your life back. That is good news. Now, to get to the final portion here, Poilievre addresses Carney's costing of his election platform. And I'll let him explain why it adds up to $250 billion, $250 billion. And then I'll explain why ultimately it's almost a moot point.
So the question was about Mr. Carney's $130 billion in new spending promises. To be clear, these promises are above and beyond all of the spending Justin Trudeau had already budgeted for. If you add Justin Trudeau's promised deficits with the new spending from Mark Carney, a fourth Liberal term will add $250 billion of new inflationary debt that will drive up food costs, housing costs, and taxes. You cannot afford a fourth Liberal term. We need a change. On Conservatives, we'll bring that change in our platform. We will cut bureaucracy, consultants, foreign aid, handouts to corporate insiders and lobbyists to bring down deficits, taxes, and inflation. We will also grow revenue by about $70 billion by unlocking resource projects all across the country as validated by economists, independent economists. The result is our Conservative plan for a change will mean you can afford a home, food, and a great life on a safe street, and that is the choice in this election. A fourth Liberal term of rising costs and crime, or a change with a new Conservative government that will cut your taxes, deliver affordable homes and food on safe streets. Thank you.
Thank you.
very much. Okay.
What can I say except bravo? And I've been waiting for a politician to say that for quite some time. However, it's almost a moot point about whether Carney is spending $250 billion or $100 billion. We are broke in this country. The national debt is out of control. Nobody's seriously going to tackle the deficit. We need a new mentality in Ottawa. We need a different approach to so-called investment. Stop investing my money in your pet projects. Stop investing my money in woke ideology. Stop taking my money and investing it the way you think it should be invested. Leave me alone. Mind your own business. Poilievre is saying that. Now, I know Maxime Bernier would definitely take the scissors to government spending and introduce a new mentality. But I don't think Maxime's going to be Prime Minister-elect on Monday night. I think Poilievre is dedicated to these principles. I think he wants a new mentality in Ottawa. I think he wants a new philosophy. Cut taxes, cut regulations, stop spending, stop so-called investing our tax dollars. And I think Poilievre has a very good chance of being Prime Minister-elect on April 28th. So I tell you, don't lose hope. But don't for a minute think, oh, how are they going to pay for these promises? None of them can pay for these promises. We're so deep in red ink, it's beyond correction at the moment. Nobody's paying for these promises, especially Mark Carney. He's got no plan to pay for any of this. He just wants to print more money, create higher inflation, devalue the Canadian dollar and the US dollar, by the way, so it can be replaced by the Chinese yuan, and China can replace the United States as the world economic engine. That's what Mark Carney wants. I believe Per Poilievre on this. I think he wants to follow through on some common sense in government. And I think it might be our last chance on April 28th to save this country from economic ruin under the Liberals and specifically under this madman, Mark Carney, who is bringing more disaster and will be perhaps the worst prime minister in Canadian history, surpassing and subsuming Justin Trudeau in that regard. So April 28th is an historic day. And all next week, we're going to be talking about the ramifications, the consequences of this election. I've got some great guests lined up. We've got Colonel Doug McGregor on Tuesday. We've got Jasmine Lane coming on Wednesday and probably some more for Thursday and Friday. But we're going to be talking about this election till the very end, every day. So join me every day this week as we get closer and closer to this federal election on Monday, April 28th. Don't lose hope. Fear not. Let not your hearts fall or fail. We, as citizens, can still win this. Thank you so much for watching today. I'll be back again tomorrow at 10 o'clock, the usual time. Resolve to resist. God bless Canada. Godspeed to all of you. This has been a live broadcast on Easter Sunday from your nation's capital, our nation's capital in Ottawa. Thanks for watching. God bless you again. Happy Easter. Bye for now.